have the alarm services witness on the witness stand right now. Let's go to court. Okay, interesting testimony. I have one other guest, so three altogether now today. Dmitry Gorin, senior deputy DA in Los Angeles for 10 years, handling everything from gang, murder, sex, narco, white-collar crime, criminal defense on some very high-profile cases been covered on major networks. An adjunct professor at Pepperdine Law School, published in numerous articles, as well as the criminal law and procedure practice part of their code out there, which is very impressive. Dmitry, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah. So let me start with you. So we've been saying so far, myself, Joseph, and Gene, the prosecution's doing a very, very good job at building a timeline about that particular day and also putting witnesses on to explain why certain evidence may not be there, I say, to block the defense from making an argument that they failed to do something appropriately in the investigation. What are your thoughts so far about the case and about this testimony?
Well, they're laying out a foundation for proceeding with the case, laying out a timeline, laying out reasons perhaps why certain evidence is missing. Gives the jury a nice beginning and a nice introduction to how they're going to move forward. Of course, we know there's other very incriminating evidence they're going to be introducing as well later down the road. So I think it's a good way to start the trial, to let the jury know what the timeline is, let the jury know perhaps why some of the evidence may not exist. But at the same time, they're building up to, I'm sure, a strong finish to their case in chief.
And Gene Rossi, I know that you have trained many, many prosecutors, and I was thinking as I'm listening to the cadence of this particular prosecutor, even in the manner in which he handles a witness that even begins to go a little tangential, my estimate of this person is extraordinarily prepared, knows the case inside and out, and knows how to control witnesses.
Oh, she's like an artist, no pun intended. I'm going back to that prior witness when she said to the witness, "You're the art lady." So she has this gift to warm up and get the witness to be personable. And the prosecutor has obviously a lot of experience.
Yeah, Joseph, I'm curious on your end on the forensics piece. These records that he's showing about the motion detectors going off and explaining these records, even though they don't have surveillance because the cameras were off, I don't know. Is there going to be a wow factor here? Are we going to see something in this timeline that's going to show something that's going to point to the defendant, do you think?
No, short, sweet, hard to beat. You don't need to keep this guy on the stand very long because it's he's doing his job. He's describing what he does. He's talking about these things being tripped. But probably from an evidence presentation standpoint, the stuff is dry as toast. For the jury. So it's really easy to get kind of lost in the morass of this. I think that the prosecutor is tasked with the idea of really keeping this guy on point, keeping the points really tight, and driving, showing that she's going somewhere with this.
Yeah, I'm just wondering in my own heart whether or not there's going to be some factor where there's going to be a motion detector going off over here and somebody in a master bedroom or something of that nature that's going to be somewhere around the timeline that somehow is inferentially used to say that is the defendant in the home of the victim. I don't know. We'll have to wait to see. But the prosecutor certainly knows her case, is doing a great job, putting on some good witnesses. This case is going in very quickly. Very tough case for the defense. So Joseph Scott Morgan, this witness, again, another great not necessarily timeline witness, other than he's providing information with regard to withdrawals from the victim's bank account at the ATM. He is from Wells Fargo. He's in the security division. And he pulled up video from 12:02 and 4:32 where there were withdrawals. And we already know in advance that those videos are crystal clear that they are the defendant in this particular case. So again, I'm impressed by the prosecution. She knows this case inside and out. Like Gene Rossi said earlier, no notes. She knows exactly how to handle witnesses. Doing a great job. Thoughts?
Yeah, she's kind of laying down a trail of intellectual breadcrumbs for the jury to follow here, where they're going to keep. We work in investigations on linear time, Bob, where you take it from the beginning to the end, following that timeline. And I love video surveillance in these types of cases like this because it truly paints a picture. We're in a very visual society. this is going to hit the jury when they see these images and you tag it with the timeline. I think going back to phones, this sort of thing, all of this digital record that's there, it's going to be very impactful.
Yeah, and Gene, real quick, I mean, I'm not following, I'm not writing my own timeline out. I remember we used to have the big whiteboards where we would start putting all the stuff in when we were going through an investigation and making sure we had all of our data matching, because data management sometimes in a law enforcement action can be your biggest problem. You have so much coming in, you got to make sure that you're laying it out. But we have a 9 o'clock dental appointment. We have this supposed meeting that was supposed to occur with the woman hanging frames and pictures in the home, but you can't do that. That was called off. And we now know at 12:02 and at 4:32 money's being withdrawn from, the ATM. I think that this, to Joseph's point, these breadcrumbs this is the first time the jury is going to see a visual picture of the defendant with a dead person's ATM card.
I agree with everything Joe said except for one thing. I prefer slices of polenta, not breadcrumbs. So,
yeah. Well, we got to get you on the Italian Law&Crime network.
No, here's what I do want to add, and I thought of this about 10 minutes ago. What they're trying to show is that Jennifer, the victim, had a very normal life. Her demeanor, she was happy when she went to the dentist. There was no indication there was another individual in her life that possibly could have done this. I don't know what the defense's theory is going to be. Maybe it is that somebody else did this, but there was no indication that she had any angst, that she was troubled, and that she hit this brick wall, the defendant, and her life was ruined. Yeah,
Dmitry, to Gene's point, and I think it's an excellent one, I used to rip apart all the computer data of the person, the phones, knowing many times that the information or what we were doing forensically was not going to lead to any evidence other than to say there was nothing to suggest in any of these records there was anyone else who had a motive to commit this murder. It's not just proving it's this guy. We looked at everything. And I think when you do that, Dmitry, I think you make it even stronger when you got a guy with an ATM card taking out withdrawals from a dead person's bank account, that must be the guy.
This is an overwhelming case of evidence. The government doesn't have cases like this all the time. If I was this defense team, the best approach would be some sort of psychiatric approach, because they have him dead to rights. This is more than breadcrumbs. I mean, this is a whole dinner at each place. You got this amazing evidence at each piece of part of this investigation. So the only possible defense in a situation like this would be a mental health defense, and it'll be interesting to see how his team approaches it, the defendant's team, because it's damning.
And that mental health defense, sorry to cut you off, goes to the sole thing in my mind about whether or not he's going to get death or not. But real quick, Dmitry, we know that Joseph Scott Morgan likes breadcrumbs. We know that Gene Rossi likes polenta. What's your food analogy for what's happening here?
Since I'm in LA, I like sushi. What can I tell you?
Sushi guy. You learn a lot by
what. I had a do-over. Can I have a do-over?
Go ahead. You go ahead. I'll give you the do-over.
Hey, Krispy Kreme donuts, man.
All right, guys, listen. I'm being told enough tomfoolery here. We got to go to a break, do some business. We'll be right back. Okay, Joseph Scott Morgan, I'm going to go to you because off camera, while we were all wowed by the video, you said prosecutor does what?
Prosecutor drops mic. The clarity on that image is remarkable. I don't know what else to say. I don't know that there is anything that can be said. Our colleague mentioned a moment ago mental health defense, and I got to tell you, this is a sinking ship as far as I can see.
Yeah, and I mean, to the mental health defense, Dmitry, I think you brought that up. There is so much activity with him going to the Walmart and picking up the duct tape and the zip ties and the knife and all the other, accoutrements, if you will, that were used in the actual homicide itself. And then you have this very purposeful conduct taken and given a motive, robbery, money, a guy who's got a previous history of doing the same thing to his father. I mean, it was the same tying up and taking him at gunpoint to get $10,000 out of his ATM account. Amazing.
It's a slam dunk a case as the government is going to get. Whenever the government has a slam dunk case, I always think of some sort of mental health approach. But you're right, when you have such goal-oriented conduct, it is difficult for the defense to successfully argue mental health. But I'm just thinking, what kind of mitigation can they present to keep their guy off of death row in this case? You know, at the end of the day, they're going to prove this case. Their evidence is overwhelming here. But what can they do to, impact the outcome? What possible steps can they take? I don't know.
Yeah, Gene, and we talk about this all the time, what the strategy may be. And I think that the guy has only one escape out of the death penalty in this case, and that is, should he be convicted of it, he claims he's got these 8 bodies that nobody knows about, that he could solve a lot of cases, including robberies, and that could be the only thing that would compel, in my mind, a prosecutor to give him any kind of consideration.
I think you hit the nail on the head about an hour ago that maybe the defense and the defendant are hoping that something could happen. They could find a genie in a bottle and he could get acquitted to have a hung. But I think you're right that if he is convicted, they better do a beeline to the prosecutor and say, listen, we'll waive our right to appeal. You just dropped the death penalty request. He'll agree to life. If we do a proffer and he can provide evidence on these alleged 8 murders.
Yeah, I think that could be the only thing. And at a certain point in time as a defense lawyer, you got to take a case like this and say, look, I'll put a case on. I don't expect really that it's going to win or it's going to make the day, but he's entitled to a trial. And by the way, he said he wanted a trial so that he could tell his story in the penalty phase, which was almost basically saying that he knows he's going to get convicted. Hey, guys, listen, Gene, Rossi, Joseph Scott, Morgan, and Dmitry, I want to thank you guys so much. Dmitry Gorin, thank you so much. You guys provide awesome and excellent commentary. Guys, we're covering Florida versus Scott Nelson, but also Texas versus Wellesley Matthews, which is going to be starting up soon. But don't go anywhere, because we have the great Michael Bryant that's going to be taking it here with more Law and Crime. I'll be back on Wednesday.